It's obvious to me that he's delusional.
All right. For Judging Judy. All right.
Hello and welcome to Judging Judy, the podcast that finally answers the question, is Judy guilty? Now, we've got listeners all over the world. But look, Ireland, I'm going to need you to step things up. Because we've got more UK listeners than Irish listeners. I mean, do whatever you've got to do. Tell your neighbors to listen, tell your friends, tell your enemies for all I care. Do whatever it takes so that this time next week, our Irish listener count is bigger than our British listener count, okay? Now this week, our episode comes from March 9th, 1998, and we've got one case about a couple that shouldn't have moved in together, and another one about an abusive ex-boyfriend who wants his stuff back. But before we jump into things, I just have some advice. Stop, drop, and Kaiser roll. To help remind us what was going on when this episode first aired, I've brought in my friend, Professor Wikipedia, Doctorate in Shortbread. The book Election by Tom Perrotta was released. The book is about a high school history teacher who attempts to sabotage a manipulative, ambitious girl's campaign to become school president, and was later turned into a movie directed by Alexander Payne. I haven't read Election or seen the movie, but after suffering through Holdovers and part of Sideways, I'll never watch another Alexander Payne movie again. Also, it's worth looking into the allegations made by Rose McGowan against him. She was 15 and he was 28. Yahoo Pager launched. The instant messaging client integrated with Yahoo services, including Yahoo Chat. It included basic messaging, a buddy list with status messages, the ability to block other users, alerts when buddies came online, and notifications when a new Yahoo Mail message arrived. It would later be renamed Yahoo Messenger. Of course, those of us who used AOL Instant Messenger knew it was the superior messaging tool, and though neither survives to this day, we all know which program won the Messenger Wars. The 17th episode of the first season of Ally McBeal aired. Titled Theme of Life, it had Allie, Georgia, and Renee join a kickboxing class. Allie, who was an attorney you'll remember, also defended a surgeon named Greg who was charged with performing a controversial operation, and later in the episode she found herself attracted to him. Meanwhile, John suggests Allie visits his therapist. It's estimated that nearly 16 million people watched the episode upon first airing, which is at least 10 million more people than watched Kid Rock's stupid halftime show back in February. Thanks for the help, Professor Wikipedia. Next, let's check in on the New York Times crossword for March 9th, 1998. The clue for 33 down is Paleozoic and Mesozoic, and the answer is eras. Finally, let's see what was leading the box office for that day back in 1998. Number 3 was Amistad, number 2 was As Good as It Gets, and number 1 was Titanic. Which means that once again, I'm going to talk about number 4, Mouse Hunt, the live-action movie about two adult men who do battle with a mouse to decide who gets their geriatric father's mansion after his death. Star Nathan Lane had this to say about the movie in a 1998 interview.
Crew, really, they were the ones who had to do all that setting those traps. There were like 200 of them. So, and one false move and they all would have gone. And then, of course, they had to attach them to our body and our ears and hair and our clothing, and then eventually we were covered in sewage on top of that.
Covered in sewage? Sounds like Kid Rock's Super Bowl halftime show. All right, let's get to the teaser for today's episode.
He said, how does 2.5 carrots sound?
Sounds like a really paltry salad. What kind of sweet green is this?
The sooner I get a ring on your finger, the happier I'll be.
The sooner I get a ring pop on my finger, the happier I'll be.
I was literally in fear she was going to poison my food or something. I'm not kidding.
Calm down and just take a nice bite of this arsenic burger, my man, and then wash that down with a shot or two of Drano Zero Sugar. And just breathe the air. Nothing like a little carbon monoxide, am I right? All right, bring on the cases.
26-year-old creative assistant Shelley Griffin wants $5,000 from 30-year-old engineer Eric Edwards.
Creative assistant? What does she do? Take down my lunch order with crayons instead of a pen? And when she's taking down my minutes for a meeting, does she use a crayon? A creative assistant, huh? When she files a lawsuit against me for creating a hostile workplace, does she file it using a crayon? Our defendant, meanwhile, looks like the unholy love child of an unlikely throuple. Anthony Kiedis from Red Hot Chili Peppers, Fabio, famous for hitting that goose with his face on that roller coaster, and the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz. Eric's got long, flowing hair, deep sunken eyes, and no brain. Or is it no heart? We'll let Judy decide. Judy kicks things off by telling Shelley that she's going to be honest with her, which is definitely a bad sign. Someone telling you they're going to be honest with you is bad news. A doctor doesn't tell you that they're going to be honest with you before letting you know that you're not dying of something long, expensive, and painful. A mechanic doesn't tell you that they're going to be honest with you before saying you don't need a new everything, otherwise your car will fall apart and your family will die in a fiery wreck. And Judy doesn't tell you she's going to be honest with you before telling you that she's going to rule in your favor. It just doesn't happen.
I don't believe that this state's a legal cause of action.
Loser! You're a loser! Are you feeling sorry for yourself?
Maybe Shelley will convince her otherwise. Maybe the rest of the case won't be an exercise in airing dirty laundry for entertainment's sake without having any consequence on the ruling Judy's already decided. But it's unlikely. Judy says that Shelley's lawsuit is based on the idea that he enticed her to leave where she was living to live with him instead in San Diego, where they would then marry.
Actually, the $5,000 is for costs incurred by me after I left my job, my home, moved to San Diego, and then 6 days after I arrived in San Diego, he basically threw me out.
So look, that's awful. Yeah, you quit your job. I don't know, maybe you broke your lease back home. But look at it this way, free 6-day vacation in San Diego. They've got burritos, they've got the old town, and it's the home of SeaWorld, where they promise they'll eventually stop torturing the animals. No, Shamu isn't crying. Those are tears of laughter. Tears of laughter. Shelley says that after being kicked out, she was also ineligible for unemployment since she had resigned from her job versus being fired. She was left with no source of income and nowhere to live. It's the same thing that might happen to a certain orca named Shamu if a bunch of no-good-nicks don't keep sticking their nose where it doesn't belong.
He promised me that if things didn't work out between us, that I could still stay with him until I got on my feet in San Diego.
That's a weird thing to promise. How did that come up in conversation? Baby, I know it's unnerving how much I look like Anthony Kiedis, Fabio, and the Scarecrow from The Wizard of Oz had a kid, but listen to me. I want to marry you. Come to San Diego. And if things don't work out, the whole marriage thing, we can still be roomies. Judy backs us up a little bit, and we learn that Eric and the once future, but now no longer Mrs. Scarecrow, met about a year prior, and that what started out as a friendship gradually became a long-distance relationship.
It was a very short courtship.
Very Short Courtship, coming this fall on Pluto TV, starring Danny DeVito as the most diminutive TV judge allowed by law. He'll make short order out of justice. Prior to the move, Shelley was living in LA, which means that the long distance, it wasn't that long. Anywhere from, I don't know, did she live in the valley or on the west side? Let's just say anywhere from a 2.5 to 25-hour drive, depending on traffic.
Watch out, LA. It's major gridlock out there this morning. Big holdups on all the freeways and surface.
We find out that it was, in fact, quite a short courtship. Only a month or two into the relationship, she says he asked her to upend her life and move in with him, with the prospect of marriage.
This is typically something that I would never do.
It's something she'll do only for the men with the luscious locks of the I can't believe it's not butter guy and the heroin chic physique of the guy who sang Danny California. Judy asks what could have possibly gone wrong within those 6 days to destroy what otherwise sounds like a darling romance and a solid plan for the future.
Well, the way I recall it, we had a small disagreement earlier that morning.
Something tells me Eric's going to recall it a little differently. Shelley says that they had planned to go jet skiing that afternoon, so she went out to borrow a wetsuit.
And I came home, there was a locksmith there, and all of my things were in trash bags in the middle of the living room.
Eric can put up with a lot, but a woman who doesn't own her own wetsuit, a woman who would have the audacity to live with him, but who needs to borrow a wetsuit? Unthinkable. You can get your own jet ski, missy.
Get out of my house!
Judy asks Eric for his version of events, and he starts by saying that, from the beginning, From when he first got to know her, she was unhappy in LA, unhappy with her job, unhappy with the fact that all of her friends were in San Diego. She'd lived there previously and wanted to go back. She lived in San Diego and yet somehow didn't own a wetsuit. That's like living in New York and not having a sense of entitlement. Or living in Miami, not having an unhealthy obsession with cryptocurrency. Or living in Nashville and not having scabies. These things just go hand in hand.
She asked me my opinion, and I said, you should come to San Diego.
Look at me, sir, not the floor.
I'm sorry.
The floor, I think he was trying to make sure he was still on the yellow brick road. Eric says that he suggested that she could move in with him while she looked for a job, but that the offer was never meant to be indefinite and that they had never discussed marriage.
Marriage? No way!
Absolutely not. No. No.
He even told me that he saw a ring that one of his best friends, I believe his name was Luigi, that he gave to his wife. He said, how does 2.5 carats sound?
His friend Luigi was his other friend Yoshi. On weekends, did he go down to Mario Circuit with his pals to race around and avoid errant banana peels on the road? Maybe shoot out a green shell or 3? She says he also said that the sooner he got a ring on her finger, the happier he'd be, so long as it wasn't the Ring of Power, and that he wanted to go to Vegas with her. Both of which are nice sentiments, but neither of which qualify as a marriage proposal or a binding contract.
I'm curious as to why you took her things and put them outside.
Eric says he had spent the prior weekend helping her move in, including renting a truck. After an exhausting time with lots of picking things up and putting them down, he said at the end of the day, she showed him no gratitude. She wasn't appreciative of the time, the effort, the money, or the energy.
And I said sarcastically, thanks, Eric. And she jumped down my throat for that.
Thankfully, that's not the only reason, because if it had been, I'd have thought Eric was really petty and cruel. No, he says there were plenty of other warning signs that things weren't going to work out between him and Shelley. He cites, for example, her being moody and volatile.
I couldn't do anything without wondering if she's going to jump down my throat about the smallest things.
Hey, I'm just trying to put on my wetsuit. Put that pogo stick down and get away from my throat. Shelley, stop. I know what you're trying to do with that trampoline, and I won't allow it. Not while I'm flossing. He says that 2 days later, they broke up.
And I said, listen, if you can just be nice and don't ruin my place, you can stay here while you're looking for a job.
But don't you dare try to pry my mouth apart so you can jump inside my throat. Eric says that things only got worse. He says he was fearful she was going to poison his food. No doubt tipped off by the poisoned dirt frogs he noticed around the kitchen while she was making pancakes.
There was no rhyme or reason why she would get extremely upset.
Shelley tries to get a word in after Eric calls her constantly negative, but Judy doesn't allow it. And I don't know how much more we really need to hear. They weren't right for each other, and whether it was based on false pretenses or not, she shouldn't have moved in with him. Neither of them had the maturity, and one of them lacked the wetsuit to be in a serious relationship.
Non-negotiable.
With them, in his mind, formally split up, he says he took her out that Friday night. Platonically, his word, not mine. A platonic dinner and trip to the club on Friday night with the woman who you were afraid was going to poison you and who you helped move in with you 5 days prior. He's not a serious person, and I don't believe him or his intentions. But I don't know if that makes him financially liable for Shelley's bad decisions.
The next day, I was going to take her to get some breakfast, and she, for no reason, just went berserk.
Sounds like this relationship is toast. Eric says that she was upset that he had a cell phone and openly accused him of using it to get calls from other girls. Shelley tries to butt in to say that she said it because it was true. He had been getting calls from other girls, including one from a woman thanking him for a beautiful dress he got her. But the judge shushes her, so that's not officially on the record.
Wait, what?
August 1997, and this guy had a cell phone? You know that thing weighed 6 pounds, and instead of a battery, it had like a little furnace you had to shovel coal into. Sending a text message cost $4.75, and you still had to put a stamp on it first. It had one app on it, and it wasn't even a calculator. It was an abacus. The clock on that thing had a minute hand, an hour hand, and a bird came springing out of it every half hour.
And she slammed my door when she got out to the car and said a bad word.
I'm gonna need you to be a little bit more specific than that, Eric. Are we talking or She didn't call you a did she? Eric provides no insight in which word she said or how bad it was, but he says that he was fed up and felt like he was living like a prisoner in his own home, a prisoner who jet skis. It was at this point that he bagged up her stuff, which she collected over the next few days.
It's obvious to me that he's delusional.
In a different world, that's what they would have named I Can't Believe It's Not Butter. And instead of Fabio, the spokesperson would have been Jason Alexander. Just think of what could have been. Judy doesn't want to think about what could have been and doesn't want to compensate Shelley for making a mistake, whether Eric was delusional or whether it is in fact butter. Shelley tries to return again to the topic of his philandering with the woman who Eric gave a beautiful dress to, but Judy's still not interested.
He doesn't look like he's a nut.
First off, hard disagree. Second, is that how we determine justice? I think it's enough to say you don't get paid because you made a bad mistake. That's enough of a reason. That's a good reason to not rule in her favor. What isn't a good reason is that he came off well coiffed, that he used his Pantene Pro V. That should never enter your calculus, Judy, how well dressed he is. You had a good reason to rule against her, and instead you're citing his looks? That disqualifies anything else you say.
Not listening. Not listening.
Judy goes on to say that he also doesn't sound like a nut by citing the fact that he helped her move her stuff. At least she's not crediting his veneers for making him innocent, but still, you could easily make the same argument, the opposite side, that someone is a nut if they help someone move in with them after a month of dating and then break up with them because they don't say thank you. Judy has really good paths ahead of her to get to a really obvious ruling, but for some reason she keeps taking the crappy route instead. Google Maps is telling her to stay on this road. It's green, it's no traffic, straight shot, and she's like, nah. I'd rather go local. I'd rather take the service road. I like potholes. I like stop signs.
No matter how long it takes.
At last, Judy returns to the valid reason Shelley's not getting paid. The relationship didn't work out, and that's not something you get paid for. She was on to say it wasn't much of a relationship, though, again, depending on how much traffic there was on the 5 from LA to San Diego, it could have been pretty long.
Griffin, get on with your life. This case is dismissed.
In his parting words, Eric further proves that he and Shelley were a really, really bad match, and not just because she had to borrow a wetsuit.
I don't drink at all. I'm very, very straight. And she loves to party. And she's not the same person, needless to say, when she's partying, and she does that practically daily.
What made either of you two think this is going to work? What made you think you were going to be happy together? There have to be easier ways to get back to San Diego than bunking up with the Straw Hot Chili Pepper guy, Shelley. Enjoying the pod? Consider supporting us by sending $1 or $2 our way at tiptopjar.com/judgingjudy. Or don't, whatever. I'm not your boss. Our second case is Mike suing his ex, Nicole, saying that she won't return his possessions. Announcer Jerry Bishop adds, without really qualifying it, that Nicole says that Mike assaulted her.
It's pretty important, isn't it?
Now let's get this out of the way real quick. Mike definitely looks like a guy who worked at Circuit City in 1997 and tried to convince your parents that this Packard Bell would be the last computer they'd ever have to buy and it would only cost them $2,300.
Everything worked out for the best.
Mike and Nicole had been in a relationship and lived together for 4 years. However, things went south and there was an altercation. Afterwards, he left and she got a restraining order. The camera pans over to Nicole, and on top of a simple pinstripe blouse, she's got an interesting looking pink ribbon or a pin. It's got some white writing on it and a logo of some kind. I cannot with 100% confidence identify it, and a reverse image search came up with nothing, but I believe it says prevent domestic abuse. We start with Mike's recollection of events. It starts with him saying that for a long time they had a good relationship, which is like saying the hamburger had a good life when it was still a cow.
Leading up to this, we hadn't been getting along for, I'd say, about a year.
Which is about a quarter of the time they had been together, but anyway, he says that it eventually came down to him having to move out, and that after a month or so he found a new apartment. 2 weeks later, he came back to fetch the last of his things.
I was trying to talk to Nicole. I knocked on the door. She came out. We talked for just a second, and she went back in. And I knocked again. She came out. After about the third time, I was just aggravated. There's belongings of mine in there, and I kicked the door. It broke, and I left.
This is the worst knock-knock joke I've ever heard. What a punchline. And you think you were aggravated? You kept knocking on the stupid door. You know how aggravated that must have made her?
Take a hint, dude.
He smiles and laughs as he says that he found out later, quote, that he broke it pretty well. As if it were an achievement, as if he's proud of himself. Then again, I'd venture to say that in a life otherwise devoid of accomplishments, this may be the sole thing Mike had to celebrate. You sure did teach that door a lesson, and Nicole had to pay for a busted door, so you taught her a lesson too. Good job, buddy.
But to everyone that matters, You're still a loser.
It's because of that incident that you got a restraining order?
Yes. Well, there was a lot of abuse that led up to me asking Mr. Kelly to leave.
Nicole goes on to describe an incident 3 years prior where he slammed her head into the floor.
You don't expect to drag up all those things that happened in 94, 95, 96, 97, and expect to be compensated for them now, do you?
Hold on a minute. Judy, she asked what instances of abuse predicated her needing a restraining order. Maybe there's a countersuit, and Judy's saying that it's not valid because these are incidents that stretched over time, which that feels spurious to begin with, but fine. I guess if she stayed with him through multiple incidents, it's her fault, whatever. But Jerry Bishop hadn't mentioned a countersuit. If this is just her explaining why he shouldn't get paid, I say, yeah, sure, dredge up old incidents. It's context. I hope they clear this up.
On the time he broke the door, I got the restraining order, and he continued to contact me after that. As a matter of fact, I received a postcard in the mail yesterday from Mike.
Nicole hands over the postcard and another piece of mail she got from him for Judy to see.
The reason I keep having communication is that I care about her, and there's a really good friendship there that was lost.
I'd venture to say that the friendship was lost right around the time her head hit the floor with your hand on the other side of it, and that any chance of her not closing the metaphorical door on that friendship happened right around the time you broke the physical door of the apartment with your foot. He goes on to say that he wishes things hadn't turned out the way they did, as if he were a passive observer and not directly responsible for his actions. You watch a baseball game and your favorite team loses, and you might wish it hadn't turned out the way it had. But if you're the pitcher who gave up the game-winning home run, you don't get to say that you wish it hadn't turned out the way it did. You did it.
Well, I'm looking at this postcard. I mean, this isn't a threatening postcard. He's really professing nice things to you, right?
Now, we don't get a look at the postcard. But Judy, she had a restraining order. It's not a restraining order except for, quote, nice things.
I don't see it that way. Pulsing through my veins as if caffeine, that scares me.
Well, this is the way you hear it, that this isn't a threat or a nasty postcard.
Need I remind anyone who's listening that Judy was once a real family court judge? How often did she tell women they were wrong for feeling threatened by men who had a pattern of abuse and had active restraining orders against their exes? How often did the nice things Judy claimed the men were professing wind up with the men continuing to abuse these women? How often was Judy an enabler? An accessory to abuse?
All the time.
Judy goes on to tell the fetid turd that despite his wishes, the relationship is over. Though I just wonder if he needs to send Judy some nice, well-meaning postcards to convince her otherwise. Judy then takes a look at the other piece of mail he sent Nicole, and the judge shows again how unqualified she is.
Miss Boyda.
Yes.
This is a lovely card.
It is.
It's a card from somebody who still professes to have very strong feelings for you. And there's nothing threatening about it. So, he had a relationship that was 4 years long. He looks like he's a pretty decent person.
He shouldn't be sending her mail. That's it. He looks like he's a pretty decent person, except when he's breaking in her door, except when he's smashing her head into the floor. How do you look then, Judy? We learned that Nicole is looking for $250 in compensation for the door he broke. Mike says that at the time that they issued the restraining order, the real court already ordered him to pay for the door, and he did. That if she hasn't received the money yet, it's because, quote, it takes a long time. Maybe he did pay, I don't know. But the 2 letters he sent her show a certain disinclination to respect the court's opinion already, you know? Eric, or whatever his name is, hands over a copy of the check, and apparently it's in the mail. But that doesn't change any of my opinions of him. He's not a better person because he paid for the door he broke. He's just not a worse one, for the moment.
But to everyone that matters, he's still a loser.
We move back now to the stuff he wants back.
Miss Boyda. Do you have his computer?
And his floppy disk full of lovely poems that he's gonna send to you.
Yes, but the computer was stolen from the University of New Mexico.
Hey, there's a New Mexico.
Would you believe such a decent-looking person would steal a computer? I'm sure he just needs to send them a nice little letter to explain his mistake. Judy says that stolen or not, it's more his than it is hers. And so she compels Nicole to return it and his software. I don't think Nicole wanted to play Duke Nukem anyway, Judy. Judy also compels Nicole to return a gas grill, and it feels like we're gonna go through every last thing these two had in their apartment together. Like the medical history form you've got to fill out before going to the doctor that includes each time each of your uncles got mono. But then thankfully, Judy says it's a laundry list she doesn't want to go through. Ironic because I doubt this guy knows how to do laundry based on the way he looks.
You really look like 2 nice people.
One nice person, one domestic abuser, but go on. Eric says the mistake was getting in a relationship with a good friend. I guess the mistake was beating her, but hey, Maybe do that to all your good friends. Judy rules in favor of Eric for his stuff and tells him to move on. I'd say throw his stuff off a cliff and throw him off too. Now we've reached the part of the episode that actually matters. Now it's time for me to judge Judy. I've got ways I do this, I've got rules, I follow criteria, but it all comes down to this. Did Judy deliver justice? Justice in her rulings, certainly, but justice in her behavior, justice in her words, justice to you, and justice to me. If she did, she's innocent, but if not, she's guilty. She could barely be more guilty today, okay? And you know what? It's because words matter. As a judge, well, as an ex-judge masquerading as a real judge, Judy should understand that. She should understand that what you say carries a lot of weight. She had a big audience. People, however foolishly, gave weight to what the yelling lady in the robe said on TV. And because words matter, Judy should be more careful with how she uses them. Now, I don't know that either of her rulings were wrong, but I do know that lots of her words were, like how she referred to Eric not, quote, looking like a nut in her first ruling, when there were plenty of other ways she could have reached the decision without referring to his appearance. Or how she kept referring to letters that a violent man sent his ex-girlfriend after beating her and breaking down her door as nice and lovely. When Judy uses these words, she's saying to her audience that, as a judge, this is correct thinking. She's saying dressing a certain way makes a man more innocent. She's saying sending unsolicited, unwanted letters to the person who has a restraining order against you is okay because he's just so lovesick. That's not the message a judge should be sending millions of viewers every day. Judy had a responsibility to be bigger than that, to use her platform to more clearly, more fairly provide a framework for what is right and what is wrong, what behavior is acceptable and what behavior is reprehensible. Today she didn't do that. And for that reason today, Judy is guilty. And with that noise, it's time for Hangman. But this isn't the Hangman you played as a kid when you really ought to have been using the name Margaret Thatcher as an insult. No, this is Hangman with stakes. And this week we're putting the flashlight app on your phone up on the gallows. Most often turned on accidentally and then left on for far too long, the flashlight app may be the single most underused app on your phone. Imagine a caveman struggling to survive, eating spoiled berries and javelina entrails. Imagine the surprise on his face if you could make light appear with just a swipe of your finger. You'd blow that stupid, dirty, hungry, smelly caveman's mind. And caveman minds will continue to be blown if I win Hangman today. However, if I lose, it's back to the dark ages for us. Our phones will still be able to, take pictures, make calls, track and listen to and share everything we do or think and feel with corporations and international crime networks masquerading as governments, but they will not be able to act as flashlights. Now, as always, I'm using hangmanwords.com, and this week I'm returning to their science words list. Hangmanwords.com gives me 6 incorrect guesses, 6 letters that can be wrong before I lose the game. And yeah, this would be better visually. All right, our answer is 2 words. The first one is 7 letters, and the second one is 9 letters. And as a reminder, our words list is science. Now, I'm wondering if this is a name. Just an instinct. I'm gonna try I as my first guess. Again, no particular reason. I have no insight, but I'm gonna guess I, which is the first letter in insight. There are 2 I's, so the penultimate letter in the first word and one of the middle letters in the second word. Yeah, you have that visual? You probably do, that probably helped. I'm gonna go with my next guess, P, as in, there probably isn't a P, but I'm gonna guess it anyway. I was right, there is no P, so I have 5 more incorrect guesses, 5 more chances here. Let's go a little bit more traditional with the letter T. There's 1 T. So I have blank, 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 I, blank, space, blank, 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 I, blank, T, blank, blank. That helped. That definitely helped. Let's try N, as in, no way there isn't an N. There was an N. It is before the first I in the first word. Blank, 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 N-I, blank, space. Blank, 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 I, blank, T, blank, blank. Let's keep that going with O. The second letter, no. If you remember, I said no way, blah, blah, blah. There is an O. It is lowercase. It is the first letter, so this is not a person's name. O, blank, 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 N-I, blank, space, blank, 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 I, blank, T, blank, blank. let's try C, as in, it'd be crazy if there weren't a C in this word. There are two. O blank 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 NIC space C blank 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 I blank T blank blank. Maybe no, it's not oceanic. Maybe it's organic. R, there are two R's. OR blank blank NIC space C blank 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 I blank TR blank. G, so the first word is organic. A, okay, so I have organic and then C and a couple of other letters. Let's go with E, see if there's another vowel in that second word. There is C blank E blank I blank TR blank. Let's go with an L. There is no L. So I have 4 more incorrect guesses. Let's try H. There is an H. CHE blank I blank TR blank. Chemistry. It's gonna be chemistry. Cool, we did it. Thanks to you, because you were there in heart, you were rooting for me, but thanks to you, mostly me, a little bit of organic chemistry, we saved the flashlight app. The next time you're lost looking for your keys, use it. It might be hard to find, you might not know how to find it, but use it. Find your keys, and when you do, when you open up your house because you were able to find your keys and you're not stuck outside and you won't die of frostbite, thank me. Thank the Judging Judy podcast. And not most of all, second most of all, thank organic chemistry. With our last few moments together, I wanted to share an out of context quote from Judge Judy. The American public pays a whole lot of money for a justice system, and I don't see any reason they shouldn't see every way that it functions. And if it doesn't function well, they can change it. That's it. Subscribe, like, fornicate, and share, but whatever you do, don't ask someone how 2.5 carats sounds.